For this video, I'm going to be talking about how to get a job as a software engineer without any experience or even a college degree at all. I think it's due to the global pandemic, a lot of people have been asking me this question, and normally I focus my videos on FPGA development, but I really think that this one in particular is applicable to all software engineering and maybe even all engineers in general. The great thing about engineering is that when you're an engineer, people care about your abilities as an engineer. They care about what have you done, not where have you been, right? So if you graduated from a state school or an Ivy League school, those things don't really matter in engineering. Myself, I went to a state school, and I never felt like I was, limited in my opportunities as compared to somebody who went to a more prestigious school, because I had a lot of great resume experience. I could clearly talk about things I understood, the problems that I could help the company to address. And so, and that's what interviewers really want to know is, what abilities do you have that you can bring to the table and help us? And so I think that's the great thing about engineering is that, really as an interviewer, you're trying to understand what is this person's abilities? How good are they at what, what the resume says they can do? And so, without any experience, or college degree, it can be challenging to get your foot in the door. But I'm going to give you 3 tips in this video to help you secure a job for yourself. So let's talk about them. So number 1, be open and honest about your particular situation. You never want to hide anything on your resume or neglect things on your resume. And this is extremely important, especially to people who have never been to college at all. So if you've never been to college and you're trying to build up your resume and you're trying to show how much you understand about engineering, software engineering, whatever it is, the first thing I would do is I would probably start with a sentence that said, I fully understand that I don't have a college degree, but I'm a kick-ass engineer and I'm really smart and really hard worker, really driven. And be really open, honest, and just start with that. Because people are going to notice that. They're going to look, an interviewer is going to look at your resume and try to say okay, where's the education experience that I usually see here? And if you're upfront with them at the beginning, they'll know what they're getting into. They won't feel like they're trying to be tricked, that you got your resume through the front door. So that's particularly important, again, for people who have never been to college at all. But you really want to highlight in that first section there, when you highlight the fact that maybe you didn't go to college, you have no experience, how have you excelled with those limitations? Where have you how can you stand above the other peers in the resume pile? So what projects have you done? What's interesting? What do you bring to the table that's different from everybody else? And I'm going to get a little bit more into that in the 3rd bullet. So that's number 1. Open and honest. Be upfront. Don't try to hide things, because people are going to find out and they're going to feel like they're being tricked. Number 2, be direct. So reach out. This is going to be a tough one for a lot of the software introverts out there, but you really need to be proactive and really reach out and talk to people. So go on LinkedIn, look for people at companies that you want to work for, and just write them messages. I mean, I've received messages many times from people who just say, hey, I'm really excited about your particular company. I see that you're an engineer there. If there's anything you can do to help me get an interview, I'd really appreciate it. That means a ton. I can tell you, I've interviewed a lot of people. Very few people do that, but when I do get those messages, it shows me that that person really does care about the company, is really motivated, and does their homework. So already you're a step above everybody else. I definitely encourage people to be annoyingly aggressive, right? So send those unsolicited emails, send those LinkedIn messages. Just do whatever you can to try to show that you're excited, because ultimately, as an interviewer, we want to hire people who are excited to do the work. And if you're out there blindly messaging somebody you've never met before saying, I love this company, I love this job, I think I'd be a great fit for it, that's awesome. And if I'm an interviewer, I'm going to look for people like that who are excited and enthusiastic. Absolutely. When you're reaching out to these people, I would recommend trying to look for companies that are a little bit more forward-thinking than maybe the traditional companies. Maybe not the big, stodgy, slow-moving companies, especially people who have no education, no college experience. They might just say okay, we won't even look at a resume that doesn't have a college experience above a 3.0 GPA. That just, a lot of the older companies will do that. So look for more forward-thinking companies, smaller companies, places where you can really stand out a little bit more, and places that are willing to bend the rules, so to speak, the traditional rules of you have to do this, then you have to do this, and then you can get your foot in the door, then you can get an interview. You know, try to find other ways around to work the system in your favor. And the third thing, and this is probably the most important one, beef up your projects, right? If you don't have any education, you don't have any experience, you need some great projects on your resume that you can talk about and you can demonstrate. Because if you're going to get your foot in the door, they're going to ask you to talk about what you've worked on and maybe even demonstrate what you've worked on. And so a couple things. Number one, software engineering, you really need to have a GitHub page. I love, not everybody interviews with a resume that has a GitHub page on it, but when I do see a GitHub page on it and I'm interviewing somebody, I'm absolutely going to go on GitHub. I'm going to check out what they've done. You know, what is their coding style like? Do they document their code? Do they seem methodical? Do they seem like they understand things and are, compartmentalize things into logical functions and break down architectures into architectures that make sense, and really understand how a software engineer needs to think. So GitHub, like, put anything you can on there and make it good. Don't just throw garbage up there because you want to get a high line of code count or something. Put some good stuff on there and work it to be, and see, first thing you see when you see somebody's GitHub page is how many commits they have over time. And if you see a lot of green, that person is clearly dedicated to the craft. They want to be a better software engineer. They're committing all the time. Not every commit needs to be perfect, but they're doing it. They're touching the stuff every day. They're interested. It's clearly something they want to make part of their life. So that's number one for project beefing up. Number two, a good demo goes a long way. So you're going to get your foot in the door. You're going to get that interview. And when you're in the interview, if you have a demo to show, whatever it is, those are great. One of the best demonstrations I ever saw, believe it or not, was for a thermal system inside of a desktop computer. So all it was just sensing like the speed of a fan and the temperature inside someone's computer, and then digitizing that, like just sending that data to an LCD screen. But the way that this person solved that problem, they solved it in like 3 different programming languages. They had all these like test benches for the whole thing set up. You could run it in different like operating systems on Windows or Mac or whatever it is. And it was just like this crazy development platform this guy put together for a temperature sensor inside of a computer, like a pretty basic thing, but clearly took that to like he rewrote it like 3 times in different languages because he wanted to just try out different languages, and was able to give pros and cons of each language. And that was an awesome technical demonstration for something relatively trivial, temperature sensor. So good demo goes a long way. So yeah, those are my big tips there. I'll review them again. Be open and honest. Be upfront about your situation. Number 2, be direct, and this is probably the hardest one for a lot of you. Be aggressive, annoyingly aggressive. Be that guy who, you think you're annoying somebody, but ultimately you got to be a little bit annoying to get your foot in the door. And number 3, have some great projects that you can talk about that you're going to show on GitHub and link to on your resume. So I really hope that helps for everybody. I know it's a tough job market out there. A lot of companies are not necessarily willing to take risks, but I wish you good luck in your search. Thanks.